I'm going to call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock sharp. And so welcome to the February Board of Directors Business Meeting. So call to order, proof of quorum, all 5 board members are present, therefore proof of a quorum is in evidence. Next up, approval of minutes from the January 23rd, 2025 meeting. Would anyone like to move that we approve the minutes of the January 23rd, 2025 meeting? So moved by Mark. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. Passes unanimously and the minutes are thereby approved. President's reports coming up. I don't have much that isn't already in the other items that are on the agenda, so I'll be brief in the interest of time. First of all, want to thank everybody who attended the Mardi Gras party in this very room last Saturday. It was a fun time and there was lots of good food, drink, and fellowship. So I hope everybody who came had a great time and can spread the word on how fun our social events are. And of course, to thank the social committee led by, of course, T and Joe for their pulling out all the stops as they always do. So thanks once again. I don't know what the next social will be, but we'll obviously keep you updated and it will be, I'm sure, later in the summer, I would imagine. All right, next up is just a reminder. I know that Melina has already reminded, but just to add verbally that if you're interested in running for either the board of directors or for the Covenants Committee, to please, go ahead and contact Melina, and then she will, in due course, set the time frame for submission of bios and things like that, working in concert with the election committee. Last one is the only one that's really new, and just for the benefit of the association, our attorney, one of our attorneys, Todd Sinkin, had left Reese Broom. So I just wanted to make the community aware of that one of our 2 principal attorneys left the firm. Our other, Kristen Buck, remains and will be our principal liaison to Reese Broom. Todd had been the chair of the practice department for their community association, so I don't know whether or not somebody else will be joining Kristen, but Kristen has worked alongside Todd for a number of years now, and Kristen was recently, within the last couple of years, promoted to partner, or they term it shareholder in their structure. So she is for my layman's term, she's a partner in the firm, and so we look forward to continuing to work with her. But just for your reference, that Todd Sinkin, who used to be our principal counsel, has gone on from that firm. Okay, those are the only things that I really have that are not otherwise in the other topics. And so with that, we'll shift over to Owners Open Forum, the first installment of that. And it's about 7:03 now, so we'll take that to about 7:13, 15, depending on the flow of the conversation. So open forum is here. While we're waiting to see if someone does have a question, I know we have some submissions that were sent to us by people who couldn't make it, so I'll just address one. Justin suggested to the board that we take into consideration moving the executive session to the beginning of sessions rather than the end. That had never come up to me, but we can certainly discuss the matter. So that was just one thing that was mailed to us to ask if we could put forward an open forum.
Any substance behind the recommendation?
I mean, I gather that it's because we could simply start early and then everybody could be with us from the beginning to the end. But I mean, I don't see much difference in, essentially no one comes back after in the time I've been on the board, no one has returned after the executive session to get that. So I don't know that that's something that will be pressing us this time, but I do want to note the suggestion.
Yeah, he said instead of everyone waiting till the end to find out if anything was approved, because a lot of times people drop off before you guys come back from the executive session.
Okay, well, we'll certainly take it into consideration. Anybody online have something? I know we have one more emailed in submission if we don't have someone online or in person. Would you mind summarizing, Melina, what the, we'd have to read it verbatim, but the gist of an email submission for someone that couldn't make it tonight?
So it's in reference to, of course, smoking, policy. If we decide that smoking can continue in the building, the smoker should have to spend as much money effort to keep smoke from escaping, their units as the non-smokers have to do to keep the smoke out. So she, one of the residents here was trying to summarize, I'm sorry, I didn't know you were gonna read the whole thing. So they're just going into, the email expressing, I think this was recommended back in, October, like putting the blue painting tape over the covering outlets, magnetic covers to block the airflow with, in the bathrooms. So I guess we will talk about that further, on a resolution on this. She just goes into, expressing how the smell's really bad, especially in the evening. And for smoking on the balconies is useless because it comes back into the units and affect those who are non-smokers. And that's what was expressed in this email.
Okay, thank you. Duly noted. Anybody else, or shall we? We will have another session at the end, so if somebody was, if they had a question percolating that you don't want to formulate till later, we can come back to it, but seeing and hearing no other open forum comments, we'll move on to the board discussion. 2 items on the board discussion, of course, the ever-present window, patio, envelope, facade, all of the above project, and the smoking policy. So let's just start with the window patio project. For the benefit of everybody, we have had some, I guess we'll call it guidance, for lack of a term, or estimate from our consulting engineers that since the last time the project was bid, we would probably expect, and this is based on him reaching out to some of the vendors informally, a 7 to 10% increase in total price over the last bid. That is not insignificant for our purposes, because we're looking at something that was, $3.5, $4 million. So 10%, of course, is, hundreds of thousands of dollars of differential. So that is significant, and that will, obviously has to be taken into consideration as we talk about this. But to help guide the conversation, I just wanted to put some, some food for thought for the board members, and then let them all weigh in, which is, have we gotten to the point where we want to, bite the bullet? I mean, and that bullet is getting more and more difficult to bite as time goes by. And as we all know, it's not going to get cheaper. It's going to get more and more expensive, and, compounding 10%, 10%, 10%, we're easily going to be in $5 million territory by the time this conversation comes to fruition. Or do we want to think about alternatives? I mean, people have talked about, reopening the issue of allowing people to do their own windows. People have talked to me in the hallways about, a cost sharing agreement on that, or, so that people who have the worst affected units wouldn't have to continue to suffer. All these questions are still relevant. And so for the board, those things, as well as, should we, now knowing the kind of general 7 to 10% on the same scope of work, do we want to direct our TDL to formally do a procurement at this time, or not? We're not still in open forum, but I'll let you get a brief comment in.
Based on the context of your words, it's almost imperative that you allow the units to do their own thing. And then if there is a part where the unit does a thing, it should be a courtesy stipend given back to that, because we're like 3 years into this. If you do the basic math, I know I sent the video to the board about the wind blowing my sliding doors going back and forth, so, or when it was like 17 degrees. So on average, if you just round it up to $400, you go 10 months, it's maybe $5,000 a month, $5,000 a year, 3 years, a little over 17,000. I got a window installed adjustment in terms of how much it would cost. I got two estimates, one for 24 and one for 17,000. This conversation about the windows has been so long-standing. It really has been. And then you said out of your own mouth, if we push it back, another 10% will be added on to this. I was at a meeting when it was like $1.5 million, and now it's at 3. I don't understand why it just can't be done. Say, this is what we're gonna do, because we're 18 months into this with this new board. And the last thing that happened with this board, we got rain cameras on our doors. Nothing else has happened. The doors coming in, going back and forth. Now, see, I'm not really worried about this neighborhood because I think it's really safe. I'm gonna protect my family. I'm gonna send an estimate for the modifications in my unit. I'm not gonna wait for it. If you really want to get sophisticated about it, you can have the windowman.com, see who want to get their windows in. They will give us a discount rate much cheaper than what you're getting than doing that way. And everybody will be happy. It would save money. You're paying $9 for a dozen eggs. Who wouldn't want to cut their costs? So at this point right now, I just want to know that if I put the 17 or the 20K up front that I'm gonna have to put up right now, I'm not even gonna worry about any pushback, because at this point right now, it's borderline negligent. Borderline negligent. So I would like to hear if I front that money, will I get a stipend back for that? Or no, I just gotta eat the cost, because it doesn't seem like we have a period to the end of this sentence of nowhere, we just gotta come.
Sure, I definitely appreciate all your points. I mean, I'm in agreement with you. I am of the view that we need to bite the bullet, and do the whole building. I think my personal view is that we need to borrow what we need to borrow, that we will decrease our, reserve contributions, in balance to that, to whatever loan payment we have, and that we just need to do it.
So I just want to say, I do admire the emails that you send back, really well worded. But I would encourage you just to know, you're in a leadership position, and as a leader, you're responsible for the people being us. So instead of biting a bullet, swallow it. Swallow it. Let's move forward.
If my vote were constituted all 5, I would certainly do so, but
Well, they're right there right now.
well, I'm gonna open it up to them so they can chime in. I also just wanted to add, unfortunately, I have to answer your question about the stipend or reimbursement, very honestly, which is a previous board resolution to this one that is well before anybody on this board was serving. It was during Judith's presidency, does lay out that anyone who spends money on the windows is not to be reimbursed. I don't agree with that, and repealing that may well be on the table for the board to consider. But just to telling you what's on the books now, which I need to be honest and frank with anybody about that, because I don't want to misstate what the current policy resolution states. I would like to repeal it personally. All right, so I've talked too much, and I think my view is known. Does anybody else want to chime in on where they see the state of play on this issue?
Can we repeal it?
Yeah, can we repeal it?
Yes, any policy resolution can just be repealed with a subsequent policy resolution. Just resolve that policy resolution XYZ is hereby repealed.
So
I'd like to read it before I
Of course.
repeal it.
Of course.
So within 30 days, like the next
Yeah.
meeting.
Well, I can send out the text for it, yeah, of course.
We repeal it.
I've
I'd like
been
to
living
replace my
through
door and window right now.
I've been living through
You're
this
like,
window
I mean, how
thing.
many more days do we have to wait? It's obvious.
We gotta
This
stop.
number's gonna be brutal, by the way.
Okay,
We gotta stop.
we're just gonna reel it back in so that we can make sure that everybody, so we'll make sure we send the text out. I mean, we don't want to know, like, if that's repealed, then, what are the implications of that? We can certainly ask our council about that, but any further thoughts?
Yeah, this goes to a broader thing, and so if we can repeal it, I'd like to repeal it. If owners would like to then go procure their own thing at their own rate, we work on a stipend, there isn't a stipend, I don't know about that process, but that way, people who are in dire need, who want to go take action, they're at least authorized to go do it. Second to that, if we want to continue to go down the other path and swallow the bullet, go do it, that's fine, let's go do that. But let's figure out what our options are, and do we do like a hybrid like we previously talked about, where the owners procure their window and door, we know what those costs are, we know which each unit size window and door is. And then the association pays for the installation. Something like that, that way we're taking a loan out that we can likely pay back in a relatively economical time, or do we just take everything and take a loan out for even longer time? And we need to start talking about assessments, we just don't have the reserves to do this and also meet the law of the Commonwealth of maintaining 1.5 million on hand at all times. The bigger issue that we can get to later on is, I don't think one meeting a month is enough anymore. I think it has to be like maybe every 2 or 3 weeks. Until we start making traction, because we have these meetings, owners and residents speak their piece, we speak our piece, everyone looks at it, we take great notes.
Thank you.
Melina goes off, she does her thing, and we all just kind of stop. And then another week or two go by, and then we do this again, and then eventually we stop. So I think we need to put some hustle behind the muscle. So I'm up for repealing it, I'm up for letting owners do it, I'm up for owners, wanting to procure it and us installing, all those things combined, and then we just gotta identify which one it is. And then Ginger has to work with our insurance or our financial people to figure out the best way to go loan the money or borrow.
Can I say something? Are you
Right
taking
now
any
we're-
comments from the computer?
Not right now, we'll get back to open forum though in
Okay.
some moments though.
I've been hearing about these windows for the last 30 years. And I'm not trying to be funny or, a smile I see, but it's been 30 years. The board's been talking about it. Nothing's been done. We have to do something, okay? And it's, if you.
So what do you wanna do?
What I wanna do?
Yeah,
Whatever we do, I wanna maintain control of what the building looks like after the new windows go in. We can't let people just run out there and, put whatever they want in, because it'll be terrible. I think we pick a window that we wanna use and say, if you wanna put the window in, put it in. And move on, because we're just wasting time. And nothing's gonna get cheaper.
See, here's the thing, when a professional came in, he automatically knew that the windows had to be bronze. In addition to the windows having to be bronze, he was in line with what you're saying. Everything is fine, it's not about changing the windows because you wanna change the decor alone, we wanna be within line with the building. We just want something energy efficient.
Ron, love the passion, man, but
All right,
Yeah. Yeah, so let's, one thing to remember too is that the last time that I was before my time, but we did experiment with the idea of owners being able to replace their own windows. I mean, part of the issue there is maybe that we weren't tight enough. People were getting windows that subsequently have been discovered not to be properly rated for the number of floors and the wind and all that stuff.
Well, Tom, people were doing, once you let them do what they wanna do, which is what happened back then, there was no real control. And then even the building management themselves were putting in windows that didn't meet code.
do we even know what the codes are? Do we even know what the requirements are?
I can give you all the requirements.
So we'll provide those to the residents and we'll say it has to swing the way it swings today and it has to be bronze in color. Off you go.
Well, there's bronze and there's bronze and there's bronze.
Then you pick the bronze you want them to have.
Well, this is from the association, of course, that has a specific policy resolution on what is white. So, to your point about bronze is bronze is bronze, we have a policy resolution that actually defines the color white, so. One thing that I was chatting briefly with Mark about before, which is if we go down the road where we don't replace all the windows in the building and we just open it up for people who are in the greatest need and we work out some sort of cost share or, as you said, maybe installation versus procurement or whatever. We also do have to face something, which is for some years now, we've been stockpiling cash for the purpose of a multi-million dollar, now, we don't have enough. I mean, everybody knows that. We didn't stockpile enough. But that being said, if we were to say, listen, we're no longer looking at the windows as a building-wide project, but it's more of an ad hoc thing, I would think that that should significantly impact the upcoming fee increases. Because we've been stockpiling reserves with a particular project in mind.
Sadly, that's not the case.
Profile,
Yeah,
How so?
because I don't remember which meeting it was, but within the last few meetings, there was a review of like the out project for the planned project for 25 and the project for 26 and the project for 27. We've got some big projects coming up. We've got redoing like the surface above the seal between the grass and the garage basement area. We've got we've got people, we want to maybe rechange the key fobs on the locks. We've got, there's boiler system. We've got this fire safety thing that we all like had to panic about a few months ago about the fire watch, whatever, which thanks to Melina's help, we got under control. But we've got a series of, this is a building is, 50 some years old. We've got a series of not small, not inconsequential additional work. If, to your point, we weren't to spend the money we had set aside to do the windows, we still got a lot of stuff that needs to be done to get this thing and keep this building to the shape and the condition we want, and to do all those things that are on the planned out calendar. Have we done the math on it? No, but that's something that when we've had these sub meetings, started to talk to, Melina and David about, is how we start to not only just look at what the recurring costs are, but what's like, what do I need to plan for next year? What do I need to plan for the next year? What do I need to plan for the next year? And like in our meeting last week, we, instead of saying, there was something that's like a once every 5-year fee. And we said, well, we're not gonna put it on the budget every 5th year. We're gonna put it every year and spread it across 5 years so that we don't all of a sudden have a bump one year and it throw off the budget. So we wanna do smarter things like that, but that means looking into the future. So let's not fall into that trap of, well, I'm not gonna fix this, so I'm flush with cash, because we still have a lot of other things that on our, not even honeydew list, but need to do list to keep this place running and keep it safe and keep it efficient, that money needs to go towards. And the concern I have is if we don't, in a very prudent way, we need to do this window project. And I'm like, Kyle, if I gotta meet every week, I'll meet every week. We gotta get the ball moving on this. And we need to get the funds committed and get them ordered and get them started. But what I don't want is 3 million for this and 3 million next year for something else and 4 million next year for something else. I don't know what all these other projects are, and we need to really look at those costs and make sure we're planning for that, so that we can all still afford to pay the condo fees.
Amen.
So I liked Kyle, the idea of, we need to get the math, figure out the costs. We need to sit and talk to the financial people about how do we look at the cost and how do we divide the loan out and how long it needs to be in some level that is not gonna kill us all. But the idea that maybe we find a middle ground, a hybrid solution, which is, we can reduce the cost if the owners would, as an option, if the owners bought the material and we paid for the labor, that would, ensure that we all got the same product and we got it at the same quality and we got the same material and we got the same color. But you know, we'd find, it's kind of like a sharing of costs kind of thing, and it keeps that. We all hate that, once you know that once your condo fees hits a certain number, it's never gonna go down. So if it jumps really high for us to take out this big loan, it ain't never gonna go down.
So if we might avoid an assessment. But I think with the window, if we go forward with the window and door project, we're doing an assessment, we're doing something, or we're just drastically jacking up the condo. There's not enough money. And if they were talking about this for 30 years, they should have started saving 30 years ago.
And is the board 30 years ago?
The, you know,
We
one,
are who we are.
yeah, I mean, all we can do is be, all we can do is be where we are. I mean,
We can't change that. We
So,
can only go forward.
what I think I'm hearing, and let's just see if we can commit to this, which is, you know, I'd like to reach out to Kristen, because there are significant legal issues around having people do their own windows. I mean, it's a common element. We're essentially, you know, asking you, Sylvia, to say, I am waiving my right to have this paid for by my association. I mean, you would have every right to say, hell no, I'm not paying for my own windows because I pay the common fee that everybody pays, and this is a common element. And we're really asking people to surrender that value, and that is highly legally problematic. I'm 100% for it in principle. But I mean, I really would like to have a solid legal view, and I'd be happy to, the first thing I'd like to do before the next or meeting, which I'm fine with having it be more frequent, would be to reach out and get an actual legal opinion about the import of repealing the resolution and the reasons why it was repealed in the first place and the legal import of that. But second and concomitant to that, I mean, should Melina direct Chris to get this procurement out to the world?
Yes.
Okay. So that's the only way we're
thing that
gonna.
makes me nervous about this, I've heard on other sites, is that each individual resident that's doing this would have a separate warranty. But it's still the association responsibility. So how does one track, you have to track that in the file. So we have to keep that warranty in mind as well.
I would imagine,
Because
and
that person can move and we would never know
Sure.
who put the windows.
I mean, I'm not an attorney, but that's why we'll ask one is, I would imagine that if we were to go this route, that when someone made a change request for their particular unit, if it did have to do with the replacement of windows, we would have to have a legal document wherein they acknowledge all the things that they are giving up, essentially. I mean, if you're saying, okay, I'll pay for the procurement, but you pay for the labor, I mean, you're acknowledging that you're paying for the procurement and this money out of your pocket that you're not gonna get back. So I'm sure that can be crafted in such a way, but I wanna make sure it's legal and good. So we'll get back to open forum in a moment, but so let's go forward, let's direct the new procurement, because we're never gonna know an exact price until we get bids, right? We can prognosticate about 7, 8, 9%, but we don't know for sure until we actually get people who bid on it. And at the same time, we'll get a legal opinion on the repealing of the previous policy resolution. If that is legally okay, we can read the text and go for it, next time if we feel we want to. Any other avenues to proceed in the interest of time?
At the last meeting, some people were gonna talk to a financial advisor at Morgan Stanley.
No.
Yeah,
And did you?
that was my homework, and I'm gonna be honest. Life got in the way and it didn't happen. I'm making myself a to-do note to get that done next week. My bad.
So we will,
Is there any way maybe we can just agree, hey, she'll get that done, we'll get the legal opinion, and let's reconvene in like 2 weeks?
we can call that.
And then that way we have that information, both those the items, right, prior to the bids coming back, and then we can go, here's what we can do, and then that way we know maybe 2 or 3 weeks after that, the next meeting, we can make a definitive, here's what we're doing type approach.
Okay.
Swallow the bullet, if you will.
All right, any other lines of effort that we should be working on simultaneously for the interest of timeliness? Because the point is well taken about the time this is this decision-making loop is not proven to be fruitful. Anybody? Okay. So those will be our lines of effort in the immediate term and with a goal of having a meeting on the subject. We can call a special meeting so that nothing else can be discussed at that. It sounds like that might be a working.
Either way to do it.
Yeah, yeah. So we could have our regular business meeting once a month, and then maybe in between, we have at least one special meeting that's devoted only to special projects. This being the main.
Just whatever
special.
has to be discussed right then.
Yeah, okay, well, let's do that. All right, next up is smoking, which is also a policy consideration. I will say that we've gotten a couple more complaints. There's one that we'll have to discuss in executive session because it involves, specific unit and name, but I wanted to loop back to this because, in the midst of other discussions, the last time I brought smoking up on the agenda there, it didn't seem that there was a coalescence around a common viewpoint on the matter. As I recall, some were skeptical, some needed more time to think, some were opposed for various reasons. So I just wanted to loop back to it because, my view on the matter is that I would support some restrictions on smoking with the grandfathering in for existing owners. But there is, of course, a continuum there ranging from, a minimal approach would be, say, requiring new leases for renters to be smoke-free, all the way up to nobody can smoke in the building at all, full stop, the end. And there are steps along the way. Now, to the board, I want to field viewpoints on this because I don't want to keep bringing it back up to the agenda wastefully if we just don't have majority support. I mean, so I just want to kind of take the temperature on how people feel about smoking restrictions. Since the last time it came up, I did have a little email back and forth with Todd Sinkin, aforementioned, about enforcement. And, he acknowledged that enforcement is the challenge behind these sorts of things because if an owner comes up to us and says, I'm having problem with smoke coming into the building, first question is where is it coming from? Is it coming from above, below, side to side? How are you sure? How do we adjudicate that? I mean, do we go with monoxide detectors into the adjacent units? How do we do that, particularly in the absence of a covenants committee? We have no rule enforcement committee, so it's really leaning heavily on the administration. He said that the enforcement was largely, it's difficult. All of our enforcement mechanisms are very difficult. So if someone's not supposed to smoke and they smoke and we give them a $50 fine, and which is, I think, the most we can do by law. And then those fines can accumulate to no more than a few $100s total. So if someone is violating a rule like smoking and causing great consternation to their neighbors, and we say, hey, we find you in violation, and they say, hey, I'm gonna pay $1,000 and that's my maximum lifetime penalty from the Commonwealth, what do we do then? It's the same question as we have for any other, enforcement mechanism, which is if you're willing to pay the fine and follow the law, I mean, what are we gonna do? I mean, we gotta be sniffing under the doors?
What do you gotta do? You gotta show a picture of somebody smoking? So my position remains the same as it was before, which is fine, ban it, I don't care. You banned everything in the common areas outside, so you drove everybody inside to smoke. So maybe you do what a lot of companies do and they give people a smoke area. Like, hey, the 2 benches by the tennis court, nothing 15 feet further than that, you can smoke around there, but you can't smoke in the building anymore. I don't care. But when people complain, nobody can come to a board meeting in the future and be like, somebody's smoking, there's no way to enforce it. But I don't even think you can find somebody without categorically being able to prove they were smoking. Like if Snoop Dogg lived here, you'd have to have him open his front door.
Mhm. Okay, so the idea of a smoking area,
He wouldn't live here.
yes, Snoop would pay the fine, but.
Probably right by the building.
So, I mean, so a smoking area is another way to think about it. Other thoughts?
Smoking area is great. Who's gonna go outside when it's, below zero.
Oh, smokers will.
Smokers will.
Yeah, that means nothing to them.
If they don't have a choice otherwise, but
They have a choice.
if they have.
Maybe get caught, maybe
Maybe
be,
they get caught. Yeah. What's the chances?
They don't care.
No, they don't care. Well, Linda, have you been in other buildings that have smoking bans and you've seen how they
We try.
control, but they never, there's nothing to get
And then you have cigarette butts all over the
Right.
land. Landscape, so.
Yeah, I mean, the resolution, Todd had provided me with the text of a resolution, which is the most maximum version, which is a complete shutdown. Of course, we could tweak that language all the way down to something much lighter, but if we're concerned about enforcement, it's the same, whether it's, no matter where you land on the spectrum, you still gotta enforce what you make a rule
I'm not
about.
concerned with enforcement, I'm just saying, don't be surprised when it's not enforced. And no offense, but I don't think it's your job to go around policing the building on, I see smoke, who's,
it.
and I don't want that to be your occupation either.
So, should we proceed with an alternate? I mean, what do we think as far as,
What are I mean, I'm not understanding, I'm not grasping what our courses of action are, you know, it's like. I'm fine with the ban, but if we can't enforce it, we put in a ban, we say, oh, check the block, we're done, we did our job.
Right, but nothing really got
And-
changed.
Then people are like, but I'm still getting smoke, and that letter that you got, that you read, the letter that we saw earlier this week or something, where somebody. You know, is claiming it's just a horrific in their unit and they just can't, you know, keep their laundry, you know, from smelling like smoke. I don't know I don't know what our recourse is. And, you know, if there's this fine maximum thing, it's like, we banned it, we fined them. And then we give them the palms up salute, like, I feel horrible, I don't know the right answer, I mean. I'm fine with voting against, you know, to ban it, but if we can't enforce it, what have we done?
so I guess, my question is, you know, should I bother, in this, I mean, should we bother to bring this, cause I have a resolution we could bring forward. But I mean, do we wanna even take our time on it, if, to your point, it's like, all we're gonna do is pat ourselves on the back at the end of it and have really not done anything, I mean, is it, you know, we could be talking about windows, to the gentleman's point, I
I
mean,
prefer to talk about windows.
okay. So, I mean, I'll,
and the other projects that we have.
yeah, I mean, I can hold it until, you know, the next time, but,
So it's on hold?
well, that's up to us collectively, I
If
mean,
you already have it, you wanna read it, like, not make
Yeah.
a move for it, but read
Yeah.
it, so we.
oh, I mean, it's a long, I mean, it's like a,
Oh, well, then
yeah,
maybe
so I'll send it around.
Send it around.
Send
and
it
then
around,
discuss at the next meeting.
Yeah.
Chance to read it.
I'll send it around. Again, acknowledging that it's the maximum and we could scale it down, okay, so I will, socialize that, as they say. Okay. All right. The only other thing regarding.
And with
Go ahead.
that, can we get an understanding of these fines and the maximum fines, just so we can understand that side of it?
So we might be able to develop a side hustle, just start selling Nicorette or something.
Because sometimes, you know, putting in rules like that, you can get some people are rule followers. And so you get some percentage of it.
You'll get a
but the
percentage
non-rule-
back, but you're not
The
getting all.
non-rule followers, the ones that are gonna, you know, that have a habit that they just can't kick.
And if we took away their ability to do it outside, so
So that would be a recourse is to potentially.
I think you're gonna get a higher percentage if you go building, no. Outside in this one area, not to exceed this area, yes. We buy a butt can, put it out there.
That's a start, I mean, again, on the
I mean, it's
continu-
something.
on the continuum of force, you know, that's something, it's a step, I mean, yeah, so, and we decide that it's insufficient, we can ramp up later, so, all right, so I'll circulate
We'll
that
get one of the
around.
nice ones, it's covered, doesn't
Okay.
move and all
All
that.
right, the good stuff, all right. All right, and just for those who are newer to this conversation, the reason we're having this is because twofold. The authority that is granted to a condo board is in the Virginia law, which does state that a condo board does have the authority to ban smoking even in the individually owned units, that is Virginia statute. And then in line with the fact that we had about a 3/4 affirmation in our last summer's poll, survey about some sort of restriction. So, we may start out small, but we'll definitely keep investigating. All right, without further ado, management report. As always, Melina, you have a nicely detailed listing here. Is there anything verbally that you want to call out before we get to the financial update from you and or David? Any special highlights?
So, just want to remind good evening, everyone. Just want to remind everyone of the new contractors that are going to start March first. That's, Clippers from Landscaping / Snow Removal. And janitorial service is Core Cleaning Services. They will start, actually, it'll come tomorrow and get the keys from me so that, you know, they can start March first. The, other thing is the stump in the back of the building tomorrow. Davy, tree experts will be removing that stump that is there. Fire pump, I just want to give an update because the board asked me to do a follow-up to find out how it's going to be built. So I received that answer and they're going to build in phases. First build, there will be a first and second, third building. This will cover, the first one will cover the engineering permits and long lead material equipment. The second building, which is 10%, remainder of the 10% of the 110 is going to cover any additional material, labor, and testing. And the third is final build due at commissioning. So, there will be meetings in between as this project progresses. There are some tests that the service department state that we are required to do this year. I let both the service department aware that we cannot do that testing yet until the fire pump is replaced. So that standby flow test is going to be done once the fire pump is installed. So that's on that. So it's in works. We just haven't received the permits and we will have a meeting, a first meeting once the permits are obtained.
Melina, do we know, in between which of the phase will cross into the budget year? And you don't need to know that now, but I'm just saying the next time we meet for the budget creation,
Yeah,
I
that's
wanna
a
make
great
sure we
question.
probably have like, hey, we'll probably have first and we probably owe the second at the threshold of the question of the budget line, or hey, the second's definitely gonna come after, so we need to make sure we factor X, Y, and Z into the
Yeah,
next budget.
I had a conversation with her to have him understand the reason why I'm asking this
Okay.
question. It's not to scare you thinking we don't have the funds.
No.
It's just that,
Properly
no,
planned.
that's what I asked him. It's just that we need to know how it's gonna come out the budget. And so, I don't have an answer to that because I think it will depend on the timing of when they get that permit in our first meeting. So
Okay.
we're in March.
We'll know before July.
We'll know before
Oh
July.
my goodness, hopefully.
Well, hopefully we'll know before like June, because that's when we gotta solidify the budget.
And so, okay, so that's it for the fire pump. You have any questions that I may have missed on that? Okay. So generator was tested on the 26th, everything went well.
Oh, thank God.
And one other thing, the irrigation line near the bus stop at the front entrance, I will be obtaining proposals to get that repaired. It's my understanding that Blade Runner was the company that conducted repairs on you guys' irrigation system. So of course, I will have to obtain proposals to get that looked at and repaired before we turn it on for the season. So you'll see that in the next meeting, March meeting. Of course, the front key box at the front entrance is now working. Let's see what else I have. Don't forget about daylight saving time this weekend. Set your clocks at 2 a.m. Now on this March 9th.
Yeah.
So 2 weeks. I'm rushing. My life is just, everything's going fast. I apologize. So the trash chute cleaning, March 10th, they're gonna be here in Hart National to sterilize the trash chutes. I will let everyone know once that date comes to as a reminder. that you cannot use the trash chutes while they're sterilizing, doing their work. Okay, I have one more thing, where is it? Oh, so the tennis court, we're gonna clean that tomorrow, and we're gonna open it up for, the weekend.
Tennis,
And-
right, not pickleball.
No, tennis.
You don't have the history on that. We've.
Wow, okay. And then, I think that's it, just gonna ask the board probably by, by April at least, to, kind of look at the Hallmark website, new look, to see which one that you guys, want us to do. The difference is the $400 cover 10 images. Whereas the other one, it's the front of the website, you can rotate several pictures, so the max is 10, and that's how that works. The 300 is 5 photos. So it just pretty much, if we want to take pictures of Hallmark outside, just to show those who come up to our webpage that they can see different aspects of our property, so. And that's it for me. I know David is telling me that he has a hard time. Keep going to my phone. People try to actually. So he has a, issue with his, computer.
Any financial updates, any highlights, I should say? I mean, we all have the statements, but.
Well, what do you guys, because I don't normally cover this for, usually I talk about the, when I do it for other sites, the, net income. Or I go down the operating cash to investment funds. The first area is what I normally report, and residents can certainly go on the website if they want to see each category, such as utility, maintenance and services, repair, and maintenance, professional services. You can see what that actual year to date is and the budget year to date, but the operating cash is $805,488.73. The total investment funds is 5 mil. And the accounts receivable is $36,021.65. This is homeowner delinquent accounts is what he has here for notes. Prepaid balances, $71,671.36. This is homeowner prepaid amounts, and which brings you a net income of $22,055.28. I can give this to you so you can
Oh.
see that number that was discussed. But does anyone have any questions? So what I want to do later, and I'll talk to David, I'm sorry, Tom, is if we hold like a seminar to go over the financial, so residents can understand how to look at the financials. So that's coming later in the summer, okay?
That would be a very good idea.
Yeah.
I know that I personally tend to gravitate towards the variance reports, because that's really what's, shows how are we tracking in the different major categories of spending, in particular for the year, but of course, there's many other aspects to it as well. I guess we could ask some questions of David later if he gets his computer situation lined up. But hearing no other questions, let's move on to general business. Looks like Melina has teed up 2 things for update only for the first 2, A and B, so we'll just note them. The revised fire pump proposal, I did sign that, and the sprinkler hydrostatic test as well. So those are just more for information only. Those are previously talked about things. Moving on to C of general business, we have the 2023 audit representation letter. So this is the statement from Gold Claim Group CPA, our auditors. For the benefit of the group, the summary here is that, our according to their assessment here, their audit, our financial records are in in conformity with the generally accepted accounting principles. And they're just skipping around here for some highlights, not aware of any fraud or allegations of fraud or anything like that, so, not aware of pending or threatened litigations, claims, or assessments. And also that, they're not aware of any rules that we're breaking. So to the best of their knowledge, our financial record keeping is, in accordance with accounting principles and the law. And so, of course, you know, Legman Norman is our financial manager, so thank you for keeping us on the good side of this audit. But it does raise a question, which is, as last year, we are being asked to, accept the results of the audit. Board members will note that the letter here, from Gold Klang indicates that this letter comprises the balance sheets of June 30th, 2023 and 22. And the reason for that, for historical record, is that last year when this came up, there were some concerns about figures in the previous 2022 audit statement. And we've kind of been in a communications loop with Gold Klang. So the long and the short of it is, you know, we do eventually need to accept the audit reports, because having a properly audited, completed audited financial statements is imperative if we were to go for loans and things like that. However, you know, to get someone from Gold Klang to come to a meeting or to call in, they're going to charge us CPA rates to do that. So what I'd like to propose to the board, see if they're amenable to it, is if folks could get to Melina so she can streamline it, any specific questions about specific figures from the 2022 or 2023 financial records, so that we can direct them asynchronously to Gold Klang and get their response. It would be super if we could do that by the next full board meeting, so that way we could address any outstanding questions and hopefully accept the combined 23 and 2 audits and be up to speed with that. Does that sound okay to folks?
Yeah, I might have missed it, but all I saw in there was a letter in the board.
Yeah, we have to get that for 23, yeah.
So we need a report.
Yeah, the full report.
And so an email from Melina won't cost anything? Is that what you're saying, or it'll cost dramatically less?
So she will not charge a fee to respond to your question.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
She'll do like a presentation kind of thing.
Mm.
Okay.
Just charge it, if we ask her to do it during a specific day at a specific hour.
That's weird.
After hours, yes, definitely a fee.
If I remember correctly, last year when this came up, the main issue was a discrepancy between what the numbers that we had and
And the numbers they had.
Correct.
And but some of them weren't close. Some of them, there was a lot of numbers that were off, but they were like a couple dollars, but there's a couple, there were a couple $1,000, tens of thousands of dollars off.
All right, so let's get a specific list together. We can send it over to Gold Klang and they can respond, and then we can, based on the responses to that, I would suspect we'll be able to take a motion on accepting both of these together and put it behind us. Okay. Moving on, sprinkler 5-year required maintenance test proposal. Give me a moment to scroll ahead here on my iPad.
There's that example that Ginger used.
5960. $5,960, 5-year required internal inspection for the sprinkler systems that protect the hallmark. Does anybody want to move to accept that?
We have to do it this year, right?
Yes,
So let me be more specific with my language. Would anyone like to move that we accept the proposal from BFPE in the amount of $5,960 for the 5-year required internal sprinkler system
I move that
inspection?
we accept a quote for BFPE to do the fire inspection at $5,000.
$960. Yeah, okay. So moved by Kyle. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Passed unanimously. Okay. Got it. And then we're moving on to the next one, which is the standpipe flow. This one, I'm less familiar with this, so this $3,080. But again, it's not
this is the
something.
one that's gonna happen later.
That's not later, okay.
But, yeah, when they install the fire pump, but I don't know how later, and I didn't wanna,
It's a flow test. It just measures the
Okay.
pressure that's getting, usually to the highest
do the
floor.
pump, right,
Yeah.
pump, yeah.
Mhm, okay. All right, would anyone like to move that we accept the proposal from BFP International, in the amount of $3,080 to provide the 5-year standpipe flow test?
I move.
So moved by Kyle. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye, opposed, no. Okay, passed unanimously. All right, we've gotten through the business section. The only outstanding issue from the general business will be to get those questions and over to Melina so we can get some written responses from the folks at Gold Clang about our queries about specific figures. Okay. That being said, we now return to open forum part 2. And we have a participant, Bob.
Yeah, I have something to say about this window problem. But everybody's ideas. All right, what I've been hearing for the last 40 years, when everybody puts in the new windows, it's always something about bronze versus bronze versus bronze, and we don't want to make the building look all. I dare anybody to go out in the street now and look at every window that's been replaced and tell me which bronze is bronze. The ugly part of this building is when everybody gets a new air conditioner that has to have brickwork, which I did. The metal grating on the outside is a different size, the big square thing, and it's beige. And all the original ones that were here when we opened the building were dark chocolate brown, and they're a different size. And 99% of them are all warped and peeling paint, everything else. Now, you look at the building from outside. If somebody's riding around this building in a car or a bus, they're not gonna look up at our building and say, oh God, who's got bronze 1 and who's got bronze 2? They're gonna see these ugly grates from the air conditioner that are bright beige. All over the building, it looks like a checkerboard. Now, until you take care of that, that's something to talk about. I wouldn't talk about it. But all I've ever heard for years is this bronze, bronze, bronze. It's such a big deal. It's not a big deal. Nobody can tell the difference from one bronze to another at this point, unless you're up there on scaffold or something looking at it. So why don't we just have somebody, a contractor come in and paint all these beige air conditioner grates chocolate, or paint the old ones that were chocolate to beige. That's the thing that's making the building look weird. And I doubt seriously if anybody walking the dog down the street will even notice whether we have 2 different colors of beige or 2 different colors of bronze or whatever. But the bronze thing, and people want to do their own windows, I don't think this bronze thing is just a big issue. It's just not something to even worry about. The thing that makes the building look bad is these big splotches of beige air conditioning filter grates.
Okay, thank you.
I personally prefer oil rubbed bronze or a nice Venetian bronze. But a point taken.
What's more?
6 and I'm facing the back, so nobody's looking. I had a Hank, then Barbara. We'll go that direction.
I have a couple of things. I want to address everything you've addressed so far in the meeting today, so. First of all, regarding the windows. I think it's a common element and I think the building should pay for it. That's my primary issue. I mean, not issue, but one of my starting point. But I want to say that if you do decide that you want to let people do their own windows, I think we talked before about how, it's an envelope issue also. There's been problems with infiltration of water. I think a lot of people who have had inferior windows put in have complicated the issue of water infiltration in the building. So I would urge the board, if we do decide that people should be able to get their own windows, that we should have very strict standards, not only for the materials that are used, but also how they're installed and how they ensure that they're sealed properly so that water doesn't damage the the further, the envelope of the building. So that's related to the window. Now, as far as the smoking is concerned, I think I've made clear before that I'm for grandfathering people who are already smokers. I would advise the board to consider that we should not sell units to people who smoke. We should not rent units to people who smoke. And we should not allow anyone to smoke in the public areas of the building. I think that, we have the turnover rate, in the building is much higher, I think, than it has been in the past. I think we have a lot of young people living in the building who will not be living in the building probably as long as some of the older residents who have been here for 40 or 30 some years. And, so I think just having these rules about not selling to or renting to smokers would ensure that within not too long a time frame, the turnover would be such that there would not be any smokers in the building anymore. Also, as far as having a smoking area outside, I think if people want to smoke, they can smoke anywhere they want to outside. I don't see why we need to provide a smoking area. They can just go smoke anywhere else.
No, they can't. The previous boards passed a rule. You can't smoke on this side of the Alexandria sidewalk, on outside the building.
That's fine. You can go across the street and smoke.
I'm just telling you, they did pass a rule.
That you can't smoke on this side.
Correct. You can't smoke on this property outdoors.
Okay, well, that's fine. They can smoke anywhere outside, though. They can smoke anywhere outside of the property.
Just like, there's restriction on that. So yes, there's outside, far away from the building, you're allowed to do it.
Yeah.
Just like you can speed anywhere outside the building too. There's a rule outdoors, is all I'm pointing out.
But that's fine. That's another restriction that, is fine with me, but I just don't think we need to. That's the least significant thing of anything that I brought up, but if you want to make an issue of that.
No, I don't.
But,
Highlighting.
I just think that restricting the people who are moving into the building is enough to control the issue.
Can you do that though? I'm
Right.
just curious, can a real estate agent require that a person that's going to buy is a non-smoker? I mean, I just don't know.
It's a covenant upon the property, wouldn't it? I mean, and I
It'll
don't,
be
Nobody
in
ever
the-
asked me if I smoked or not
Right.
when I bought my condo.
that would be like in the old days of covenants on,
That is true.
on deeds, right? I mean,
Smokers are not a protected class.
yes, that is true. Okay.
So
So
we
you
could,
can-
right? I mean, I think,
You can.
well, and obviously the lawyers will have to be involved as they are in everything, but I think it would not be unreasonable. There are certainly buildings that are no smoking buildings, right? You can't rent in certain buildings. I don't see why you can't not buy in certain buildings.
But again, we can't really enforce it.
Right.
So,
Barbara. And then
We can't-
Barbara, then.
We can't, this is no different than any other rule that we have. If you're saying we can't enforce our rules, then we need to figure out a situation that we're in. Because it's no different than our parking rules, it's no different than any other rule. Almost all leases now have no smoking clauses. And if this particular, and I'm sorry, I did come in a bit late, so excuse me if I'm, not tracking with the overall conversation here. But if any of the offenders who are being cited in these emails are tenants, then it's the responsibility of their landlord to figure it out and make sure that they are not smoking, because that violates the term of their lease. They could be kicked out by the landlord. If I had a tenant who was smoking in a unit with a no smoking lease, get rid of that tenant, and that's their responsibility. We've got buildings right around us, like Carlisle Towers, that are no smoking buildings. I mean, I just don't understand why we're so intent on recreating something that's already in place in multiple buildings around us. We should find out, how are they doing it? How did they implement it? How are they enforcing it? And, you know, Melina, I mean, I think you're, again, a great point person. Let's not try and recreate the wheel here. This stuff exists already. But I think if we have an enforcement problem with that, then we have an enforcement problem in general. And I will say that I kind of think it's analogous to an issue that we had when I served on the board, which was we had a couple of units that had major issues with hoarding and everything that came out of that, like offensive odors that were negatively impacting neighbors' ability to enjoy their property, which is kind of guaranteed in our bylaws. And the board went in and dealt with that issue and didn't give them any option. I mean, it was clean out time. Seems to me that if we've got specific units where people are smoking and they're not tenants who are in, having problems with their lease because they're smoking, but if they're residents, then we should be able to go in as the association and say, we need to do this, this, and this to your unit, and you'll be billed. You know, if it's smoke proofing a unit or whatever.
Want to get to, in a moment, I'm just, in 1 second, I'll get to Alex, then Jed. You piqued my interest because, you know, we can go to court, right? I mean, so I want to amend what I said. I mean, person can max out the fines, but we can also go to a judge and ask for them to enjoin some behavior, and there's a precedent for that because those who might have been on the board will recall, you know, we had a person who couldn't take care of her dog some years ago, and there was, you know, we obtained a court order, you know, regarding that dog. It ended up being moot because the person passed away, but you know, we can petition a court to enjoin certain behavior above and beyond the fine. So
and it's nuisance behavior that impacts other people's ability to enjoy their unit, you know. And then I do have one more really quick question, which is, do we know our delinquency rate? I didn't see it in the financials, maybe I missed it.
do we have David back for that, or
He says he can. David, can you hear?
we need a percentage?
Yeah,
We just need,
just
we
like
just need the
1%.
barometer
Right.
indicator for whether it's, you know, 1%, 2%, half a percent.
What are we rated?
Delinquency or
Oh, but,
delinquency rate that we used to set every month. And it was useful to be able to track.
All right, Alex, then Jed.
Hey, good evening, everybody. So I agree with Barbara, and Hank is my neighbor, and I don't want to be incivil or have conflict on the 10th floor there. But it's frustrating, you know, in the evening to come back home from a long day working, and the entire 10th floor is permeated with cigarette smoke. I don't smoke. I don't let people into my unit to smoke, but everything in my unit smells like cigarette. Or I wake up at 5 a.m. getting ready to go to work, and in comes the cigarette smoke and walking through the entire unit. And so I would like to see this addressed, and it sounds to me this evening like maybe there's already a majority on the board that would be willing to ban smoking inside the building here. And I would encourage the board not to let like potential issues with enforcement deter us from doing something that is actually in the health and safety of everyone in the building here. My thought is if we ban smoking inside the building and someone is in fact smoking inside the building, we all have noses on our faces, and I think it'll be fairly easy to determine where it's coming from. And granted, some people may run over to a stairwell, light a cigarette, and then run off somewhere else. It may not be 100%. But I think for the most part, we owe it to ourselves as a community to at least undertake an effort to address this situation that, as Barbara pointed out, has become a nuisance. And people coming into the building are giving negative reactions to the fact that the entire building smells like cigarette smoke, and that they can't even come in and visit us without being bombarded by this. The second thing I wanted to just briefly make a suggestion on was the issue of parking that came up at the last meeting. And again, I don't want to get any of the neighbors here kicking me after the meeting, but it seems like the most equitable approach to the parking issue is simply to charge for parking. And I know that the building hasn't done that in the past, but if someone is parking 3 vehicles in the lot and taking up 3 resources that other people can't use, I think the fairest thing is for someone to pay for that. It's my understanding that every unit has at least 1 parking spot in the garage. And so if people need more than that, I feel like responsibly they should bear the cost on it. Last thing I wanted to suggest to the board was, and Ginger, I really appreciate your comments about being cognizant of not just continually increasing the HOA fees. You know, we see beautiful buildings in Washington DC where the HOA fees are $1,200 a month and you can't sell those units because the HOA fees are simply too high. And it's impossible for people to effectively rent those because of the HOA fees. So, along those lines, you know, I would like to see the window unit done. I hear whistling anytime the wind blows outside my unit, and so I know there's air seeping in and air seeping out. My request to the board is, would the board sit down and do the math before the next meeting and determine of the money that's in reserves currently, how much money would the board be willing to commit towards cost sharing on a window project? And then how would the board propose to divvy that up? Would it be a flat amount per unit? Or would it be based on the number of doors and windows in the unit? Or in some proportion of what the HOA fees are for the units? I think, and I'm just speaking on my own part here personally, you know, being able to make improvements that save myself money, like our neighbor was saying earlier, and also having some contribution from the HOA would make a project appealing, but having the HOA borrow a significant amount of money and then seeing the HOA struggle under the obligation of servicing that debt 5 years, 6 years, 10 years into the future, I think poses a significant financial risk for the stability of the HOA. Thank you all. I know that's a lot.
Real quick, just to your point of the flat rate and things like that, I would imagine that it would be the same as the HOA, how the percentage is based out. So like a 1-1, their HOA is percentage based off which level of tier they're up. And then like a 3 bedrooms, there's different percentage. I would imagine the percentage would be the same. So that way it's equal amongst all parties.
And that sounds like it would be a fairly uniform and equitable approach.
And it's already defined, right? So the calculus is already there, so we can do the math.
Yeah.
How do we deal with the small issue of installation of the windows and replacing of the flashing that's failing around the existing windows right now? I mean,
We make that a requirement. I'm not gonna say that we're going down the path of letting owners do it, but we're gonna say, if you go down the path, here's all the things you have to do.
Right, just like a renovation.
Modification.
Yeah, it would essentially be a more involved application for renovation, which would include, you know, whatever legal language. we need
Agreed,
to
and
have.
also there'd be a back end of, we expect to see a picture of when you remove your window, the condition of the brickwork. And, you know, but I don't know, we have.
We'd figure that out.
We'd figure that out of like, somebody goes, that's fine, the repair
no,
that
I
they
just,
did
I
is
just don't
good.
want that to be forgotten. that-
No,
You're, no,
that-
absolutely.
Yeah.
No, and, you know, Hank brought it up, it's like, we gotta also make sure that we keep the building,
Mhm.
you know, safe and secure and safe from leaks and, you know, it, again, as we've said many times, it's not just about windows. It's about the, you know, the structure and keeping the structure safe and the structure sound and waterproof.
I just have a,
Oh, I think Jed was next in the queue, but you could be right after him.
well, all I'm gonna
And
say is,
by all
I'm
means.
just wondering, I'm looking at the 10th floor there, I see my floor, I'm on the 6th floor. I don't think I have a problem with smoke, but I'm on a unit where I don't have on either side. But anyway, is there any, opposition to like, for like the 10th floor, or those people on the 10th floor, if they can maybe get together and kind of work out what's going on? I mean, on an individual floor right now, because you guys are having,
We only have one smoker that I know of on the
and
floor.
it causes all that
She
smoke?
just- I guess so.
Well, anyway, I'm just wondering, because I mean.
Peer
while we're
pressure
waiting for all
is not
this other
working on the
stuff,
10th
then
floor.
the other small solutions.
Well, I would say this, clearly you're not having a problem on the sixth floor because it's obviously the most pleasant place to live.
Well,
It is.
My
It
floor,
is.
it's my, that's right, we have two, I mean, two board members on the sixth floor.
Right.
Yeah.
I had gone through replacing our windows in my townhouse in Florida a couple of years ago. And it's a lot more complex than just the color of the frame when you're looking at the thickness of the glass, whether it's tinted with titanium to keep out solar rays, and it's the installation of how many bolts are going into the frame of the building in order to secure the window. And so that focusing just on the color, I think, shortchanges what the whole is of looking at the right window. The other is it was brought up about the possible city requirements or specifications for windows, and that wasn't further discussed. I just, each of the individual owners are going to be doing this to ensure that what they're getting is going to meet the specifications. And then you'll have multiple contractors who are going to be installing it and then needing to monitor to make sure that the installation is being done according to code, if there is code. And one of the avenues we looked at for funding of projects in Florida was rather than building, as Ginger was concerned about, special assessments into the monthly, was to have a special assessment with its own pay schedule, so that when you finish paying the special assessment, it wasn't built into the monthly, but you then had completed paying the special assessment and it ended. And giving the owners the opportunity to pay it all at once, avoiding the financing cost, or pay it out over a period of time on the monthly, so that you're able to then pay down the debt more quickly. And I guess my screen. That's enough for now.
Laura.
It's getting late.
Yeah, all the discussion about the windows and, yeah, it's been, many years, but my question is, how come that we were allowed and we use basically, because as far as I know, you all use the same vendor and they had the same specs, because there are quite a few unit owners that they change the windows, because yeah, it was unbearable. The wind would come in, I couldn't sit in my kitchen, in my dining room, because if it was any wind out, conversation, it was so bad. So, we were allowed to change everything on our own finances. Nothing was, subsidized by the board or by the HOA or anything. So suddenly now the tenants, and some of them, I'm sure they are unbearable, because the water just comes in and they have to live in those conditions. So that's definitely this window facade and everything, it should be a priority and taken care of. And with regarding to smoking, being on the first floor, I get even now, and we had a very brutal winter, right? But I still get the cigarette butts on my patio. And again, I'm not looking forward to the warmer time when, it's like every morning I have to go and collect all the cigarette butts.
Thank you. I'm mindful of the clock. I want to, obviously get voices, but I'm also mindful of the time. Is there anybody online that has one where you can maybe just one or two before we close this out?
Sarah, they had a question
Hello.
earlier. Hi, go ahead, please.
Can you hear
Please say
me?
your name and unit. Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Okay, it's Alan Taylor, and I live in 1512 as a secondary residence. My only comment on the windows is that whatever decision you make, if you allow the owners, to pay for part of the windows, then there has to be a resolution made that a future board will not tell them that if they go through this again, they have to replace the windows. Because as I understand it, when they sent out the bid the last time, some of the other unit owners, and myself included, already have had their windows replaced in their own units. And those windows, even though they are perfectly fine, would have to be replaced.
Thank you, Alan. You are correct in your reading of the resolutions as they currently stand. So we would have to amend language because that resolution that I referred to earlier does state, to Alan's point, that anybody who changes their windows on their own dime would still have to have them replaced in the future if there were a building-wide change, and that's something that we can revisit in the adjustment or repealing of any resolution on the subject. Anybody else?
Can I just
Sure.
mention something? I don't know that the board would be able to make a resolution saying that no future board can change that resolution.
I think you're right, Barbara. I don't think that a board can commit a future board any more than Congress can bind a future Congress. So it would have to be, we'd have to really get a tight legal opinion on that, because I'm sure that we cannot bind today what the best interests of a board, the best judgment of a board 10 years from now, under different circumstances. Anybody else?
Okay, well then, if that's the case, then I have a follow-up comment. Then the board would have to be funding the whole window project, because then I think you have a legal issue. And regarding the Congress statement, usually when Congress makes a new law, they do, especially in tax law, they usually grandfather in what has previously been done.
Thank you, Alan.
Yeah,
One last
and-
comment or two. Oh, sorry.
I wanted
Pardon
to
me, Alan, for
comment on
cutting
the
you off. Go
smoking.
ahead.
Yeah, okay.
This is
Regarding the smoking issue, oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, we have Alan, you
That's okay.
finish your thoughts succinctly, and then we'll move on to the next.
All right, regarding the smoking issue, I already have it in my leases that they can't smoke in the unit. And I think it was brought out before, if it's an enforcement issue, then as Barbara said, it's up to the landlord to handle it. And so just keep that in mind if it becomes an issue in any unit. If it is an investment unit and there's a renter in there versus an owner. I think there are provisions, which has already been said by you and Barbara, that there are provisions to handle a violation. As in any situation, whether it's smoking, the parking, or odors, water, or anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. All right, one more. We'll have one more from the, is there one more? in the
This
queue?
this is Christine Posnock in 1009. And I had a question. We've been in the building a little over a year. And our unit, I believe, has newer windows replaced by a previous tenant. They're very nice. I have no problem with the windows. They're great. There's no water leakage that I see, and nobody below me is complaining. So I'm assuming they are well installed. The patio door is another story. That's a problem. But I had somebody in here recently who knows windows and said, well, these are really good windows. And if I were you, I wouldn't replace these windows because now the newer windows are not such good quality. It's hard to find, planned obsolescence involved, a good window. So could I keep my windows, but have my patio door replaced? These windows are bronze, whatever kind of bronze, I don't know. Is that a possibility?
It is a possibility. I mean, it wouldn't be, as I say, right now, it would not be within the realm of the policy, but it could be amended.
I think right now anything is possible. We just don't know what path we're going down yet.
The thing to consider is we buy into your offer, and then 6 years from now, 10 years from now, you say, you sell your unit, somebody else buys it and says, I got these windows that didn't get replaced when everybody else's windows didn't get replaced, and I got a leak and the building needs to pay to fix them. So if you do everything at the same time and everything has the same warranty and everything is done to the same standard with the same product, it's easy for the building to maintain and have common standards. I am very concerned if we start having all these with one-offs, as it relates to the integrity of the building. I replaced my windows probably 10 years ago, and I think they're fine. But you know what? When the building process happens, I'm gonna get new windows, whatever it is, that's what's gonna happen, because it's best for the whole integrity of the whole building. I may not have as good a windows as I have today. I hope that we do. I've gotta believe that we're gonna get as good as what we have, but, something to consider that we as the board have to consider is what is the best for the whole building and the integrity of the whole building and the warranty, and the responsibility we have for future, owners and future tenants. I may be misspeaking there.
No, I agree with you there, Ginger, because, you know, it gets back to the terminology, which is, it's not just windows, right? When we're talking about that as the envelope,
Yeah.
the envelope is shared by everybody. So if your windows above me are leaky and mine are great, well,
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter to me, because I'm still getting the water, right? I mean, water flows down in the
Yeah.
most direct route to the ground. So, you know, so it is something that is
But, you know,
more than just.
I mean, your point, and I can hear the frustration, and, but it is something we have to consider. That,
Yep.
that's, I guess, my response. We have to consider the bigger picture.
All right, we'll close. We'll do one and only one more, because we do have to be mindful of time, but, the first open forum didn't have any questions, so, one more question.
They
did? They did?
I just have the statement to make, it's not a question.
Oh, I thought, sorry, I thought it was an additional question.
I wanted to answer
So-
the Barbara question, it's
Okay.
8% delinquency rate,
I'm sorry,
8%.
8%?
That's what I received the calculation as.
Wow.
We've had a high number of deceased people that have
So
passed
we're still
away.
working on those.
And so so part of it is impacted by dealing with some estates.
That's good to know, but again, to the
I'm just trying to
point
give you those
of,
a caveat,
can
yes.
we just see it, you know, on a monthly basis, because the 8%, yeah, so thank you for the explanation.
It's not as bad as it sounds, in that it's not that we have a bunch of owners or that aren't paying their thing on a regular basis. It's more impacted by a higher, maybe the normal number of folks that have passed away in a recent time and dealing with estates.
And then it's especially important to want to see it because we should be seeing it then going down and not satisfying.
As you know, sometimes that takes multiple years.
And we do
It
have,
does, yeah.
and
Okay.
David did note in the email that we are striving to get you guys down to 3%, so.
Well-
Okay, so that is a goal.
We
Zero.
had been,
We've been at 3% for.
well, I mean, a couple of years ago, we were at a quarter of
I'm
a
sorry, I should
percent.
have said under 3%.
Yeah, I mean, we were under 1% for a while.
So that's all I wanted to let you know, and, unfortunately, I did receive that late and I couldn't put it in the packet.
Thanks, Maria.
So, we will work on that to get it, on time, okay?
All right, so we're gonna go to executive session in a second, but just look out for a notice of a special meeting that we'll try to schedule in the intervening time. Would anyone like to make a motion to recess to executive session to discuss protected business? So moved by Ginger, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, no, the resolution passes unanimously, and we will now go into executive session.
Hey, Bob, to your point, I don't know if. Okay, never mind.
I just want to know what I'm voting on before I vote for the no smoking thing. I just want to read it.
Oh, of course, yeah, it is, it's not, and we'll give a moment. Let me know, are we clear? All right, so during the executive session, the board entertained one request for the waiver of a late fee. The board has decided to grant that, and so per the rules, we have to take that vote in open session. So would anyone like to move that the board grant the waiver, the late fee waiver request that was directed to us and discussed in executive session?
So I move that the fee waiver thing that we discussed and all the particulars associated with it, an executive session, be approved.
All right, so moved by Kyle. All those in favor is indicated with aye. Aye, passed unanimously, so we'll give that effect. And unless there is any other business to come before the board, we will call it concluded, adjourned at 8:54 PM. To